Well, yeah. I mean, if Notre Dame can do anything up front with their offensive line, they can have success in the run game against Cincinnati. I really do feel that way. I mean, IU had some success in the run game. I mean, they were getting 4 or 5 yards a carry. I didn't look at the box score. I'm just going off of what I saw with my own eyes.
Indiana had a chance to run Cincinnati off the field early in that game, Vince.
Yes, absolutely correct.
They peed away went for it on 4th down instead of taking a field goal, threw an interception in the end zone, and still was up 14-0 at one point in time, right?
Right. Yes, they were.
I mean, it could have been 24-0 like that if they didn't make mistakes.
Right. Which you can't allow a Cincinnati team to hang around, but we'll get to that part later. But the bottom line is here with this matchup right there, that one. I feel like Notre Dame can have success because you said last week you feel like when the offensive line gets it, like when the light goes on for this group, it's going to go on. This would be a great week for that to finally happen because I think that they can have success. We're just talking about the guys that Notre Dame's lining up on the offensive line and the guys that Cincinnati is lining up on their defensive front. Notre Dame has an advantage there, man to man. They do. It's just, is that light bulb going to go off? Are things going to click for this line? Because if they do, I think they can run the football with some effectiveness in this matchup. I really do think that.
I mean, numbers-wise, Vince, it's a pretty ugly matchup.
I mean,
Cincinnati doesn't have great numbers, to your point. They gave up 169 yards on the ground to Miami of Ohio, 152 to Indiana. That's another part of this matchup that's intriguing is not only does Notre Dame have a defensive staff that will have spent the summer talking to the Notre Dame offensive staff about Cincinnati. That stuff usually doesn't happen the week of.
Right.
The defensive staff has their own issues to worry about. Those are conversations that will happen during the summer. And they'll put together sort of a scouting report on, what they know about the players and things like that during the summer. And then the film's going to tell you what they're doing schematically. I mean, that you don't need to have a heart-to-heart with Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens to know what Cincinnati's doing defensively, schematically. You're going to see it on film for 3 games.
For sure.
But personnel-wise is really where hey, this kid really struggles with this. Hey, this is how we had to make sure we kept him out of these situations because when he was in these situations, we'd have some trouble or whatever. Hey, this guy's really vulnerable to this type of route, that kind of thing. But also, they played Miami of Ohio in the opener. Miami of Ohio ran for 169 yards on them. Miami of Ohio's head coach is Chuck Martin.
Right.
So that's another area where I look at and say, that's an intriguing matchup. What did Chuck see things that they thought they could do? I mean, because Miami went 9 of 28 for 109 yards passing. They could not throw the ball on Cincinnati. Yet they still managed to score a couple touchdowns, and they ran the ball, in my opinion, effectively. I'll say this, Vince. If Notre Dame runs for 169 yards,
oh my gosh,
against Cincinnati,
throw them
like Miami of Ohio did,
throw them a parade.
They're going to win by 14, 17 points. Yes. I mean, like that's how bad it is, but also how good this offense can be with just a mediocre performance of the offensive line. But statistically, Vince, this is a rout. This isn't even close. Notre Dame is coming off a game in which it rushed for 3 yards. And then again, I hate saying that because it also includes sacks and then the taking the knee, which I think is completely stupid.
Right.
But as we pointed out in our previous shows this weekend, your 2 stud running backs, arguably one of the best, 5 best backfields in the country, had 39 yards on 20 carries. So there's not a lot to be excited about in this regards from a statistical matchup. And we don't even need to spend a whole lot of time on it in regards to that aspect of it. It's just, is the offensive line going to play better? That's the big question. Now,
it's what it comes down to.
Right. Yeah, no, you could go ahead, Vince. I mean,
bottom line,
I don't mind you interrupting me, and I know you don't mind me interrupting you. We like to have a free-flowing conversation. Yes. I know some people don't like that, but that's what we do, right? We're here talking ball.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, if Notre Dame can execute on the offensive line, then they're going to have success. Period.
They'll win convincingly.
It is that simple. It really does come down to that. It is that simple for Notre Dame's offense. If the offensive line can execute, and I'm not even saying execute 100% of the time, okay? I'm saying if they execute 50% of the time, 60% of the time. I know that now we're getting crazy, but if they can do that, they're going to have
40 right now.
They're going to have a ton of success. They just will. And then the run game will obviously open up the pass game, et cetera. But this is an area, and I'm not going to use the word dominate because I'm not going to say that based on what we've seen so far. I'm not going to do that.
Hold your own.
Yeah,
get a body on a body.
If you can do that, you can have success.
Now here's the challenge that let's talk scheme for a second now. Okay. Here's the challenge that Cincinnati presents, because as you watch Cincinnati on film, they're doing a lot of the same stuff they did last year. 3-man fronts. They're in a 3 linebacker alignment. Their third linebacker's Ty Van Fossen's a little bigger than the guy they had last year, right? The kid they had last year is like 5'11", 215 pounds. Ty Van Fossen's more like 6'2", 220, 225. It's actually more of a pure 3-3. Then they have a nickel in the game. So like it's a pure 3-3-5 is what they've done so far. They did it against Indiana. It's what we've seen so far this year. Last year, there was no chance in heck that Cincinnati would have lined up that way against Notre Dame. They would have done what they did against Georgia, which is go to a 4-man front and play some 4-3, right? Against this Notre Dame team, there's nothing on film that's going to make Cincinnati think that they need to put an extra defensive lineman on the field. So I think you're going to get the 3-3-5 this week.
I agree. Because if you're looking at Notre Dame, why would you not do that? I'm not worried about your run game.
You're beating them with 3. Everyone's beating them with 3-4 guys. Why do you need to put an extra guy on the right?
Agreed.
Your danger is to Michael Mayer going off, the backs getting out of the backfield, Avery Davis, Kevin Austin, Braden Lindsey. That's your fear.
Correct.
You're not worried about them running a football on you. So when you look at it, what they're going to do is they're going to go with their 3-man fronts. Now they'll move one of the linebackers around. Sometimes he'll walk up, looks like a 4-man front, but it's out of their 3-3-5 personnel.
Correct.
But what I've noticed they're doing, Vince, is they're doing a lot of crashing. They're going to take those linebackers and they're going to just crash them hard and get a running head start to try to slam into the Notre Dame linemen. That's problematic for me because Notre Dame's guards have been very catchy, and they've been getting blasted on these type of things. So I would like to see them early in the game come out and just when those guys come, just chop them. That's what I would like to see them. Even on runs. I don't care if it results in them, clogging up the run lane. Just because it's kind of like for linebackers getting chopped is a lot like a quarterback getting hit in the face when he drops back to pass. You get flipped on your head a couple times, and all of a sudden you're going to be a little less apt to run in there 100 miles an hour.
Oh, absolutely.
But the danger, however, is if you go to chop and a guy's helping you inside, you get a penalty for that. But I think they need to be able to blast those guys. I think the guards need to be able to pick up those hard crashing linebackers. I would not want to see the backs be the ones primarily responsible for the one blitzer on that. Because, again, they're bringing 4. The back can help if they bring a second inside linebacker. But I want to see the linemen come up and engage them and be physical with them. I think if they can do that, then I think that's where Notre Dame maybe could create a crease or two. The tackles are going to have to be good because Cincinnati's ends are really good from what I've seen so far against the run. Where they can be vulnerable is in 2 areas, and this is what's going to make this game interesting. Number 1, cutbacks, which Notre Dame hasn't been great at cutbacks, but Kyron Williams is freelancing. I think could maybe result in a big run or 2 this game. Same with Chris Tyree. The other area is because they're so hard charging, I think you can get outside of them with some things that maybe other teams can't get outside of them on. And here's what I mean by that. Because they're in a 5 DB look, theoretically, they have perimeter players there to chase your sweeps and your things like that. However, I think Notre Dame has pretty good blocking receivers. And I think that Notre Dame has enough speed where I think they can get outside on some things. Jack Cohn's got to be willing to pull the ball and get outside and scramble for 6 yards on a read zone. They've got to be able to hand off a jet sweep, something to kind of get Cincinnati thinking left, right, and not just downhill. Because against Indiana, Vince, they were just
yes, they were, and that's where I feel because this is a perfect segue to what I wanted to say, and I wasn't sure if I should bring it up now or the past game. But in the film that I watched, I feel like Cincinnati is very susceptible to the screen game as well. Just with the way that they work upfield and the way that they do. You're right. They were coming, and they were susceptible to the screen game. And I think if you can be creative with the screen game, I think that you can kind of outmaneuver this Cincinnati ball club. I really do think that.